Okay, I think we can get started.
Yes, great.
If
I mean,
people
I
want to
guess
share the images with their pumpkins, they can.
I really want to. I need some help, guys, please.
Um, okay, so today we're going to be chatting about AI. So you're all very welcome. I think it's been a while since we've done one of these. Obviously, with summer and everything like that, and we sort of took a wee break from then. So now we'll be back doing them a bit more consistently, and just thought it would be a good chance to do a bit of an AI refresh. So today you're joined by myself, so technical account manager, and Helen, who's our interim UK team lead. I'm sure you've came across us both before in your time with Leadoo. So I'm going to be doing the sort of first half with like how it's implemented and a few sort of tips and tricks, and then Helen is going to share some really cool examples that she's built specifically in the onboarding phase for her clients. So we can jump onto those live examples. There's a few slides to get through, but we'll not spend too much time on them. We want to sort of jump in and give you the good stuff. We'll share the slides after, so you can have them as point of reference, because there's some links in there and tips in there. And if there's anything you want to say before we get started, Helen?
No, I was just writing a just note in the chat as usual. Please do just chuck in any questions that you have, and then me and Gav will just pick them up as we go along, because we want this to be as useful as possible. We have our ideas, but of course, if there's things that you've got stuck with, wondering whether you can do it, just ask and we'll do our best to answer.
Nice. Yeah, exactly. That sort of idea of, if you've got some use cases, fire those in. We've got a really interesting one later on that Helen's been working on that I've not seen before, which is really cool. So yeah, let's get started. So quick agenda will be because we've got a mix of people today. Some of you have AI already, and some of you are maybe just getting interested in it and trying to find a bit more about it. Just a quick overview of what it does. There's a nice infographic that you can refer to and share. And then we'll look at some tips and tricks about how to actually build it and what makes for good prompts. We've got quite a lot of these live now for clients, and we've been building them regularly now. So I think we've got, we've learned a lot while we've been doing them to sort of make them as effective as we can. And as I say, then we'll have a couple of really interesting client case studies, ones that we've maybe not shared before. I know we've shared a few ones. So these are newer ones that you probably haven't seen yet, which will be good. So the lovely infographic here is just like a nice little map about how it actually works, just in case anyone's unfamiliar. So we always start with the knowledge base, which is essentially like the brain. So how it learns, what it knows, what it doesn't know specifically as well. So it won't go live to find answers to your website and things like that. It doesn't work in that sense. It works by, we give it the information first, either by scraping pages from your site, maybe we upload PDFs, type in text, scenarios and different use cases like that. So it's sort of trained on that before it even starts. And then we move on to the prompt, which is if you've used, GPT or Gemini or Copilot or any of those ones before, you'll be familiar with how the prompts work. So basically you're trying to give it a bit of a persona, give it some context about the information that it knows, let it know how it can respond, and sometimes how it shouldn't respond as well, which is obviously quite key. It should not say certain things, and it should steer people towards different pathways and that sort of stuff. So, and if you've been back and forth with GPT and things like that, you'll know that those things are refined over time. And yeah, it's just a matter of trying to figure out the best way to do that. But we've got some tips for that as well. And then we're moving on to intent recognition, which I suppose is fairly new. Some of you will be familiar with this, some may not. So the idea is really we're trying to get people to transition from AI to a different pathway that's predefined in the bot. So whether that's like a lead capture node or chat to a human sort of thing. Because AI is great for nurturing people through, getting them to self-serve, finding the information they want. But I suppose the risk is that then they get that information and they maybe get distracted, or they go somewhere else and look at your competitors or do something like that. Whereas the intent recognition is really just to try and catch those people while they're in that decision-making phase and where they've got that interest, to pull them through into make it like a lead capture node, for example. And then finally, we've got the dynamic suggestions, which is a way of basically just keeping the conversation flowing. So that whole idea of nurturing someone and helping them self-serve is that it'll generate new questions each time that follow on from the conversation that they've been having. So like an organic way of like going back and forth with AI, rather than them having to type in individual questions each time. And then I suppose finally is recommendations is always have a static CTA, because we don't want to lose people. People maybe just want to get straight in and book that call, or they want to leave AI and chat to something else. So always important to keep those in. We just want to have this in as a nice infographic that you, as a nice quick way of an overview about how it actually works. And then what we want to look at now is, well, how can we ensure that we're using those things properly? So I'm not going to read all these out in full because that'd be super boring for you. We'll read through a couple, but I'll show you them in the actual platform demo when we get stuck into that. But these are just a couple of tips and tricks around how you should build the knowledge base and how you should create that that prompt. So as we always say, and you're probably sick of hearing this, the AI is only as strong as the content that it's trained on. So it's super important that we give it the right information to start with. And generally, like, smaller knowledge bases are better than one big knowledge base, because, well, I suppose it's just like humans, right? So if you are trying to find a piece of information in like 30 documents, it's very difficult, and there might be conflicting information in there. It might make it confused. Whereas if we make very specific knowledge bases about products, services, that sort of thing, then it knows which one to access to get the most accurate information. So it definitely has helped with that sort of aspect of it. And then in terms of the prompts, so we've got right prompts clearly, like you're instructing a new intern. I mean, maybe think about it like a 4-year-old or an alien, or whatever you're more comfortable with. Basically, you can't like sort of dumb it down enough. You need like give it very specific instructions, what it can say, what it can't say. Give it clear examples. If asked about pricing, do this. Use organization with an S, not a Z, like those sort of things. Be very, very, very specific. Because I suppose and we'll see from the demo, like the longest part of the implementation of AI, and I suppose the ongoing part of it, is the testing, actually scanning the knowledge bases and creating the prompt. Both of those could be done within about an hour, but the testing is where it takes up most of the time. And so getting those prompts right is super important. As I say, we'll be sharing these slides. So, there's a link to get the prompt template there, and some of these bits of advice that you can obviously refer back to. And then just on intent, and then this is the last slide, and then we'll jump into the platform. So the idea behind the intent is that we want to transition people out of AI and into like a lead gen pathway, or maybe it's taking them to gated content, maybe it's taking them to live chat, maybe it's going to retrieving a product from a product list from like Shopify, or from a CSV, like a lookup table that you've already uploaded. But the best way to think about these is sort of like, if you're creating ads and that sort of thing, if you were, what sort of keywords and phrases would people be writing? Like, how do your customers speak? How do they ask to speak to sales? How do they ask about booking a demo? How do they ask about pricing? What sort of words do they use? And by putting those in, the AI will then pick that up and then sort of leave it, like take them out of AI and go down a different path. And then it's just about making sure that we've got a bit of guidance in there so that it knows what the purpose of this is, and when it should trigger those people off into a different pathway. So I'm going to jump into the platform now, but I'll give 2 seconds in case we have any questions while I get a few screens ready. So I'll show you the one that we have on our own website. There are some links to current client ones in the slides that we'll be sharing with later, but I just thought we'll stick with our own one for now. But if there's any questions, or if there's no questions, I'll continue on. So this one is a fairly standard sort of setup for us, in that this is on the homepage. So it's still a bit navigational. It's not AI first, in the sense that people need to tell us a bit about what they want first before we go to AI. Now, we have some clients who have AI as the very, very first point. That's the flexibility with it. We could have it at the start. We could have it down different pathways. And again, if you're putting down different pathways, that's a chance to train it on specific information so that it only knows about that, like a certain topic, if it goes down a certain way. But in this case, because it's a homepage, we're not still 100% sure what the people are looking for. So what we're trying to do is we're putting our 3 sort of main use cases forward. So, what are you here to find out about? Is it getting more leads, understanding your customers more, etc.? Or is it none of those? Is it, you maybe just want to find a bit more about Leadoo, but you don't want to click through the different pages. Maybe you're trying to find something that you haven't been able to find already. And so in that case, you'll click chat to Leo, who is our AI assistant. And then we've got the dynamic suggestions ready, which is like, tell me about your services, how much does it cost, tell me about Leadoo AI. And so that's just a nice way of getting like a starting conversation with people. Obviously, they can just type in whatever they would like, but if we click tell me about your services, it'll then give an overview of what Leadoo offers. And then we'll have some different suggestions below. So because we've spoke about services, then it's sort of following on with that information. It's picked out AI, so it's added in a suggestion about that. Because we're chatting about how it works and what we do, maybe it thinks that integrating with a website would be a good next point. So again, it gives us the opportunity to keep that flow going without having to build these out manually. Before, we would have to build out individual pathways for each one of those eventualities. As I'm sure you know, you could be building those out and people might not go down through them at all. So sort of, it's a lot of time to build those out, whereas AI sort of just builds them on the fly as it goes through. But of course, you can obviously ask anything in here. So how much does it cost? And you'll see from this, it won't be able to tell me the price, and I'll show you why when we get into the prompt. But those are the sort of things where we can tell it what to do or what to say and what it can't say. But again, because we've got the dynamic suggestions turned on, we've still got a few different options there to carry on through. You'll also notice that we have the sources here. So this is where did it get that information from? So if you did want to go through and find out a bit more about that, you can click through to that. Also, this is actually good from a testing and training point of view from yourselves, is that if it's given answers that are maybe not 100% right or slightly wrong, or you wanted to change, you can find out where it got that information. So maybe there is conflicting information on the site or on the documents that you've uploaded, for example. So it's a good way to sort of double check where it's getting that information. And then there's also the rating, where you can give it, a star rating and a bit of information. So again, once you're doing that testing and once you have the AI bot live, this is a great way to find out, is it working for people? Are they getting the answers they need? Do they like interacting with it? That sort of thing. So it's good to see that. So before I jump into the the sort of back end, which is a bit more technical, I see there's a few questions in there. So we'll maybe go through those unless Helen has answered them.
It's just me having a chat.
Oh, okay.
Mostly, yeah, just to kind of gauge whether we've got people in the audience that are trying to build their own, trying to update. Seems like we've got a lot of people who just want to kind of understand what it's all about so they can dig into it later.
Cool. Well, then that is a good transition then into the back end. So we'll link these to you. You can play around with this with ours as much as you'd like. So how it actually works is, excuse me. So this is an in-page bot, and as I say, the first 3 starting options are predefined pathways around specific use cases that we do, and then the 4th option is chat to AI. So again, just to show you that we can, this is the AI functionality in Leadoo is just one part of the solution. So it doesn't have to be the entire chatbot. You don't have to take over the whole chatbot or the in-page bot. You can place this anywhere you want on any pathway. And there is a few options where after you've had a few questions, we can sort of double back to that. So we can have it wherever we would like. And I suppose depending on what workflow you want to use. So how it actually is built out is that, first of all, obviously we give it a bit of an introduction. Hi, I'm Leo. You can ask me anything, etc., etc. And then we have the knowledge base that it has access to. So we can select multiple. This one we don't need to because, and we'll look at the knowledge base in a little second. This one has been specifically crafted on certain pages. We didn't want to scan the whole site because there's maybe some out-of-date blogs and things like that, and it only needs to know certain information to be able to answer and to direct people as it wants. So in this case, it's scanned on that. We'll show that in a wee second. And then we're things like what sort of tone does it have? And then we're into the prompt itself. So again, that you should be familiar with this if you've used those other AI tools. If not, just think about it like, you're training someone new, or you're trying to give it a persona, you're trying to give it some clear instructions. So, you're Leo, you're a virtual assistant. what is its job, any questions about cost and pricing, like you can't answer those. We do have very transparent pricing, so we don't need to give it in this bot. What we want to do is we want to push people to that pricing page, because when they go to the pricing page, we have another specific bot there which helps our visitors find out which package they need, and all the pricing is listed below them. So we don't necessarily need the AI to give the information on that. In this case, we're just trying to direct them to that page, and then once they're on that page, we can action them with other tools. But you could, you could say, you may give information about pricing. To do so, ask the following questions, and maybe we get the AI to ask, like, what is your company size? What's your average order value? Do you have an idea on budget? So we can get it to ask those questions first, and then sort of recommend or discuss pricing based on that, because every use case is different. And then just another sort of few prompts around how it should act. Keep the answers nice and brief. We don't want it to be given big essays, because again, this sort of defeats the purpose of a short, snappy bot to give the answers. We want the AI to read the content and give the visitor the overview, rather than them trawling through the content itself. And then we have the dynamic suggestions. So in this case, we've got, as I say, like, tell me about your services, cost, and AI. And then a wee bit of an explainer of like how that works, and don't repeat questions and things like that, and what sort of themes should those questions be in. Now, again, you can add and remove as much of this as you want. It sort of defaults to 3, but you can have more or less if you need to. And then we've got the static CTA, which is book a demo. So we always want to try and catch those people if they are ready. And if not, then they can use the AI to go through. And then finally, we've got the intent. So we would just say, if someone has an intent to book a meeting, then what we want to do is move them straight over to the form node, which is up here. So we would just do that, for example. So if anyone was to say, I'm ready to book a meeting, can I book a demo? Can you call me back? That sort of thing. Then we can send them straight to that lead capture phase. So whether they're in that mind frame, but like, we don't need to rely on them to click this button. We can sort of transition them nice and neatly over to that. So that's how it works. You can see that it is pretty straightforward and quick to set up. As I say, the testing is sort of probably the more fun, and the taking a wee bit longer to do. And then I'll just finish up on the knowledge base, and then we can see if there's any questions.
Gab, actually,
go
into the knowledge base, there was a question that's probably relevant to the bot builder. So we had a question about like the best way to kind of test and like preview this, so in a draft mode. So maybe you can just suggest either 1 or 2 different ways where you recommend how to do that, so it's not in a live bot, as it were.
So I suppose generally what we would do for testing is, you can, I suppose it depends who is going to be testing it. If you're building it and you want to test it yourself, you can use the preview mode here, which I'm not sure why this is forbidden, maybe just because we're in a demo environment. But you can test it specifically within the bot itself by previewing that. If you are sending it to the wider team, and generally what we would suggest is send it to the sales team, send it to the marketing team, send it to people who are dealing with customers day to day, so that they can ask it questions that the customers would ask it. Because whenever we help clients build bots, I suppose we have an idea of what people might ask, but we don't know every weird and wonderful question that people are going to ask. So in that case, you can send this preview link, or you could use the bot link. The benefit of using the bot link is it will create individual conversations in the leads area, and I'll show you that in 2 seconds. So if we were to send this, so you could send this round for people to test, and then once they had their round of testing, if we go under, let me get rid of these personal data. If you go into the leads section, each of these, this maybe it'll take a wee second to load, but each of the conversations that you've had with AI will then appear in here, and then from there you can either, so you can see that I've had a little chat with it. Now it's been blocked out because I've got, actually it's just me, so I can put the personal data on because it's just my conversation. So we would get an idea of what people have been asking, what the AI is answering, So which is great for feedback. There is a filter in here now recently that we can say, well, show me everyone who's had an AI discussion. And then from there, we can download that information as a CSV. Now, what we're working on from the product side is that we're going to build in summaries into the bots where we can sort of summarize what people have been doing and how they've been using it and how it's been responding. In the short term, what I've been doing for the clients is downloading this as a CSV and then taking it into Gemini and saying, can you analyze these conversations? What are the common themes? What are people most asking? Is the AI answering it properly? Are we often getting cases where the AI is saying, I can't answer this? You can ask it to pick up user satisfaction and things like that. So, I suppose in the short term, we would download it and upload it into another AI tool, whatever one you're using, and ask it to analyze the data. In the longer term, we'll have that information in the platform. Is that the sort of thing you're asking?
Yeah, I think so. I think the other thing maybe to mention is that if you've got a live bot, what you can do is, unless you save it, it's not going to be live on the website, the changes you've made, but you could also just like duplicate an existing one and play around with that one if you just want to be like super safe.
Yeah, exactly. That's always a good trick, just in case you're worried about breaking anything. Okay, cool.
We're looking at knowledge base before I interrupted you.
No, that's good to have those points, because the testing is the thing that goes on that takes a while, and the analyzing the data is something that we're really focused on in our optimization calls. So whether you have a monthly or quarterly call with us, if you've got AI, part of that call will be, I'll have analyzed this data for you and then sent you an overview of here's a summary of the top 5 themes, and then a few sort of questions around supporting that. So you can get an idea of what are your customers actually asking, and do we need to give new content to the AI to support those questions and things like that. So no, really, really good. In terms of the knowledge base that we've used for this one specifically, it was a good one to pick because it's sort of limited on purpose, in that we only want it to be trained on the product pages. We want it to be trained on the pricing, onboarding process, analytics. So some of our key features. And then we also want to throw in a few testimonials, sort of case studies, so people can get a bit of, we can add a bit of authenticity to what we're saying. So Leadoo does this, but don't just take our word for it. Here's some client examples that you can look at. So there's a mix of scanning the whole website and then specific pages, and then also specific documents around the information. And then if we click on this trained button here, we can see, well, what has the AI tool been able to pick up from that specific page? So on our /AI page, this is the information that it's picked up. And so again, if you are uploading content or scanning pages, you can see, well, how much of it is actually being picked up, and do we need to refresh it? This one almost certainly does, because it's a wee bit out of date maybe now. But that's for we'll have to chase the marketing team on that one. But yeah, we can. So I suppose the important thing about this timestamp, and again, to go back to the whole idea of it doesn't go live to the site. So it believes that information to be true as of this date. So if you've changed it after that, you'll have to rescan it and retrain it, if you know what I mean. So from this date, it thinks that is the correct information. And that's really how the knowledge base works. So we train it with that. It can hold up to 1,000 articles. And by articles, we mean like a single web page, a document, a text file. So it can do 1,000 of those. But we would suggest don't try and push it to that. We want to keep them smaller and more specific, so that it's easier for the AI to find the answer. Cool. And then I suppose one more thing, because maybe you're thinking, I'm not going to remember to go in and scan and train this every time we update the content. We have a way to automatically rescan and retrain that. So we can set this for a week, a day, 30 days, depending on how often you're planning on. If you're adding new blogs, for example, maybe you had a knowledge base that's specifically around the blogs because it gives people inspiration, or it's tips and tricks about how to use your product and that sort of stuff. So we can ask it to rescan and retrain it automatically, so you don't have to worry about that. And I think, unless we have any questions, we're on to some other use cases. So we've obviously showed you the one on our site and showed you a bit about how it works, but Helen has a couple of ones to go through.
I do indeed. If you can switch over and add my thank you.
There you
Hi,
go.
everyone. So I'm not just a voice from the ether. I'm here. Can you see the chatbot on my screen? Because I know on my view, I see that my video is covering up the chatbot. So please let me know if you
I bet. Do you want me to just do that for now?
Yes. Yeah, I guess so. There's not really much else we can do because it's always going to be in the right-hand corner.
Yeah.
So I'm just a voice again. But so this one is a really great example. Firstly, love the branding. So if Anna, you are here, it was a pleasure to work on this because it's just really nice branding for quite a corporate function. So Cotton's Group is primarily sort of an accountancy firm. So we were working with them to obviously create these interactive solutions, but of course, AI being part of that solution. Within the chatbot is the one that I want to show you, but it's actually being used elsewhere within the website as well. And the reason why we wanted to show you this one is much more about like when you've got especially regulated industries and the way that we approach them, and show that that's where when Gav was going through, you know, how we prompt, how we say how to answer, how not to answer, and being quite like specific with how that should be done, then we can sort of have that confidence in the way that AI is responding to the messages. In this case, we've just got a little kind of, I suppose, warning here, just so people know that they're going to be talking to AI and just putting forward and just saying, you know, this is just information. We're not offering advice. So these are things that we can do. And we've been working with law firms as well. So people that are working in finance and law, and they've been really happy with the results that they're getting from this. So let's go into the AI assistant. So what we wanted to do for them is that they've got such a wide range of services, and then they're working with maybe small businesses who don't necessarily know exactly what service they need. They know what they're trying to do, but maybe not what service they need. So what we want to do is try and like shorten that research phase. So people can ask. I might say, I want to sell my business. And so we're going to get just a little bit of information on, you know, how Cotton's Group can support that and what services they might need. But as Gav showed before, we've got the dynamic suggestions, so we can continue that conversation if they want to know more. But we're always keeping it kind of bite-sized information. So we don't want to deliver a whole novel of information, but just enough for them to understand, yes, Cotton's Group can help with that. And then they can kind of dig into a bit further, but we've always got that static CTA. So once they have the information they need, then they can get in touch. So we want to be able to have that helpful interaction without having to go to multiple pages, reading articles, but never put a barrier in place to get in touch. And it can just work seamlessly with pre-scripted information. So that's usually what we say. Hybrid approach is best. So we want to use AI where it makes sense. And we want to use pre-scripted content where it makes sense. That way we can optimize the customer journey. I do have a second example. Should I jump straight into that, or do you have something you'd like me to showcase a bit further in this one, Gav?
No, I think that was a really nice example of it. I think that's, and especially on this sort of information, because I suppose it's the same sort of thing where we share with TPT, is that, you know, there's sensitive information here. There's, you know, it's important that it gets it correct and shares certain bits, or doesn't share certain bits, as I'm sure you have it restricted. So yeah, I think it's a nice one to do.
And what we can do, actually, there is one thing I will show, is like, this is an idea of a different way that we can use AI. So of course we've coming all those suggestions or those initial buttons that you see as well. So we've preloaded it with some questions that people can start with, so they're not just starting with a blank slate. But what we also can do is on pages where we know what the service is, we can make sure that the questions potentially come up where are more relevant. So I could then, in this case, we're not doing that, but our chatbots could say, right, I know that they're looking at bookkeeping. So let me present a couple questions that are specifically about bookkeeping. There is a law firm that we've been working with in Italy, and that's exactly the approach that we've taken with them. So that way that people are sort of almost finding the FAQs that might be here, but able to work with it in a much more interactive way. I will jump over to my second example. And bear with me, because this is in Greek, but through the power of Google Translate.
I hope you memorized the buttons. Oh no.
Yes. So very different use case here. So this is Revma Store. They are a reseller for energy in Greece for a particular energy supplier. But I think if any of us have tried to do this before, we've got lots of comparison sites here that help us find the different plans that might suit us. But in this case, you're going straight to this reseller and you've got all this list of different products for the business, for the home, and comparing them could be a bit of a nightmare. So that was one of our problems that we needed to solve. The second one was actually when they had existing customers. So they were having a trouble where existing customers were ending up with the sales team, which is not where either the customer or the sales team wants them to go. So these are the two things that we needed to solve. So you can see the buttons up front were, I want to speak to someone. So we'd make sure that we check whether they are new or existing, or a button that really goes into, I am already a customer. So we can redirect them to the place that, will help them best. But if I go for, I need help choosing a plan, or I have a question, then we're going to get into the AI. So we've split this up into kind of home and business. So we make sure that the AI is only looking at the information for home plans or business plans. So exactly as Gavin said before, this is about kind of splitting up those knowledge bases. So when the AI is looking for the information, it's not getting confused between which ones for what. So one thing, if you have seen our AI before, so although this is in Greek now, I can just tell it to speak to me in English. And it will switch, which is really helpful, especially if you have one bot and it needs to kind of work hard, or if you've got audiences who speak multiple languages. Let's go ahead. So what we've done with the ability to compare is that we've built this kind of quiz function in the back of the AI. So it comes with 3 very simple questions that are the key things to determine which plan might be right for them. So we've built this and given it the logic, so we know that it has a predictable result, but you get this kind of interactive human-like conversation. So I'll go through, answer my questions. So I'm going to say, I want to have a fixed rate, know exactly what I'm going to be paying. Let's go for all A's. So after this, it has a little think, and it's going to give me the recommendation for what I should go for, and also present the key information about that plan and the link to it. So it's like, here's the most important information you need to know about this. This is where you can read more. But these buttons will also say, talk to someone or switch my plan. So we're never putting a barrier in someone's way, but we're just saying that if someone really wants to interact digitally, let's let them. And I realize I do have 2 slides that actually summarize this in the presentation, but I jumped straight into the examples. But we'll send around the presentation afterwards, so at least you've got the key points.
I suppose just on that, are you putting that in the prompt and the knowledge base? But how are you foolproofing it so that it makes it definitely answers the quiz properly? Which is really cool. I've genuinely not seen for the ones I've worked with, we've not had any quizzes in the AI, so it is cool to do that.
Both is the answer, actually. So I put it into the prompt and the knowledge base. So it's actually in the knowledge base as a CSV, because we want it, again, rather than it having to trawl through all of the information to find that answer, we're making it really simple for it to find it. But also it's backed up with this kind of question answer approach in the prompt. So it says, if someone answers AAB, this is the result you should give, and so forth. So it's a little bit of working out beforehand and using AI to help me do that. So it's a mixture of kind of using AI as a tool to get to the point that you want to, and then providing it with that most, unambiguous version of that prompt.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. Any questions or ideas from the audience? So these are a couple examples that, especially within the B2B space, and just to give you a few extra ideas of how to use AI. And whilst it's great for FAQs, there is more that you can do with it with a little bit of thinking and planning.
I think the language part is quite interesting while we're waiting to see if there's any questions, because I've had a few calls recently with clients around maybe they're Central Europe, or maybe they're sort of Asia. So there will be people coming to the site with different languages, but they won't necessarily want to have different chatbots to load on those, because there's not different pages. So it'll just be one experience for everyone. So having the different languages is really powerful, I think.
Yeah. So it doesn't look like there's any questions. So we can jump back into the press if I get up to that stage. There we go. So those are the ones that we wanted to share that are more recent, that we think are really interesting kind of use cases, but we've got a bunch that you can look at. So if you are trying to think about, how can I use AI when it is just, more than FAQs, trying to do more for my business, then we've got all of these ones. So there's a mixture of B2B, B2C, different industries in here. So the links will all be in the presentation when Gav sends it out. So check them out.
Excellent.
Yes.
And giving people a bit of time back. I guess we'll wait until it says 40 at the top, and then we'll call it if there's no questions. As I say, we'll be sending this out as slides, so you can obviously reply to me if you need anything. And if I'm not your account manager, you can reply to whoever there, or you can just message me anyway, and we can figure out if you need any help, or if you have any questions about it specifically, or you want to discuss a use case. Obviously, just reach out to us and we can go through that.
There is actually a question from Andrew about how to utilize the CSVs to sort of feed the AI more complex information. I don't think I have a template for it, but Gavin, have you got sort of any tips about how to approach that, or have you got a standard way of working that you've used for those things?
We don't have a template for a CSV like we would have for the lookup table or for the labels, etc. But I suppose it's more just treating each anytime that we've done before is treating each row as a unique thing. So it would go down those and read it in that sense. So I suppose it depends on what you're trying to get across. We've had this before for some course providers where they've put the name. So if we think of column A would be the course name, column B would be the course description, column C would be the price. So the format is the same throughout, and so it would know to pick. If you said I'm looking for a Spanish language course, it would look in the description, and then it would get the name, and then it would get the price, because it would know to look that row. So I suppose it's just whatever way you're doing it, just uniquely format it. So it's nice. So it knows where to look. I think courses is the only case that we've used a CSV for AI.
In fact, actually, because there's nothing here that isn't publicly on the website. So in that example from Revma Store, so this is the CSV that I put together. It's quite straightforward. So we've got the questions, the answers that it should provide, and the combination of results. So I think it's like Gav said, it's about being really clear about making sure that the kind of the categories or the information that you have here, it's not too much information. It's the core information for it to get its answer. So you probably want to say, I'm not sure what your use case is, but in this case, we're saying, here's, the product, here's its key benefits to that product. You might want to put that in, so that way the AI can read that in such a way. The business one is a bit longer, but you can see that we're also putting links into here. So this is also a kind of more reliable way of making sure that the AI always gives the correct link as well. So that, because we all know that the AI does hallucinate, but with this one on the testing, it's worked really like robustly. So maybe, Andrea, if you want to, I'm not sure who your account manager is, but do reach out to us and we'll have a look at the use case you're trying to do a little bit closer.
Well, I think that CSV is a good example to show there, because I think it's maybe about other documents, isn't it? It's maybe about all the case studies that you want to share, if I'm thinking about it correctly. So it might be the case that we do the sort of company name, description, link, like that sort of thing is maybe a way of doing it.
Yeah. So you could say, like, if, you know, someone mentions pain point X or product X, then we want to provide them with this case study.
Or maybe you've a column for industry as well, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think it's more just about like, okay, how does it work out the context of what it suggests? And sort of, you have to do a little bit of work for it, but then it can do all of the hard work and finding that information as long as you feed it to it.
Yeah. So I think the way we spoke about the course, the course names and the content, I think that's probably the best way to go about it. So yeah, a column for the name of the document, a column maybe for the industry, for the theme, maybe a bit of a quick description, and then the link, because the benefit of the AI is it would be able to give it a quick description or a quick synopsis, so that they could go through to that.
Great. Well, in that case, it looks like, I think we're so used to talking about the AI functions now, we've like whizzed through it. But you know where to find us if you do have questions. Thank you so much for joining us today after such a while, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one.
All the best.